For this project we used the Wuco 2020 and Wuco 2050 Super Mini Benders, as well as the Wuco 4010 Mini Disco Bender. Other tools required are C-clamps and a solid work surface. To create our work surface, we cut a 5/8 inch sheet of plywood in an arc of the same radius as the face of our coping. We cut both an inside and outside radius. This cut does not have to be perfect, just clean and accurate enough to support the metal we're bending. Next, we secured the work surface to our tabletop with enough screws to keep it in place. First, making sure the work surface was clean, we placed our pre-cut face metal in position on the work surface. Using C-clamps, we clamped the metal in place at both ends. For our first bend, the kick-out, we set the depth of our 2050 tool to 1 inch and secured the thumb screw. Placing the tool on the copper sheet, we first applied a light bend by gliding the 2050 along the edge of the sheet with just a bit of upward pressure. Note the alignment of the tool with the surface of the sheet. Working the tool back and forth while continuing to apply upward pressure, we brought the first bend to 45 degrees. It's important to take your time and not rush this. Trying to bend too fast will result in excessive oil canning and kinking. Next, we flipped the copper over and clamped it into position. We set the 2020 tool to a 1/2 inch depth and started the second bend using the same process as used for the first bend. Because this bend will become our hem, we brought it to about 90 degrees. Next, we placed the Wuco Mini Disco Bender in the bend we just created and began working the metal over using the same basic processes. The Mini Disco Bender requires no adjustment and can be used to hem up to about 7/8 of an inch. Next, we rotated our workpiece into position to form a flange on our coping face. A flange can be used to solder or lock the face to the top of the coping. Our Pittsburgh lock requires a 1/4 inch flange, so we set the Wuco 2020 to 1/4 inch and locked the thumb screw. Working the 2020 back and forth, we bent the top flange to about 90 degrees. Using the Mini Disco Bender, we finished our bend at 90 degrees. Having already formed the female portion of the Pittsburgh lock on our coping cap, we placed the coping face into position. A few taps with the Midwest sheet metal hammer held everything in place for the next step. While folding and locking, the same could be done using a sheet metal hammer. We used the Wuco 1004 Pittsburgh seam closing tool. We then flipped the coping and repeated the process for the opposite face.